Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Speaking of Zane. Good to have you all in there. June the 27th, 2021 for Speaking of Zane, the 150th edition episode evening of Speaking of Zane. We hit the 150. That's what is that? 50, there's 50 some odd weeks in a year. So I guess we're coming up on 3 years. And boy, you guys, many of you have been along with us the entire way. Started very innocently out in the sunroom of the house when I just felt compelled to talk about Zane and figure out a way to keep his name alive and make sure that he's not forgotten. And the only way I could think of is for me to say his name. And I've learned so much since then that it's not just me. There is an entire community of people thinking about Zane, talking about Zane, keeping Zane's memory alive, and that is just an amazing thing for sure. 150 editions of Speaking of Zane. How in the world have I come up with enough to talk about 150 weeks? I don't know, but I've somehow figured it out. But let's see, we got Ken in there, Daryl's in there, Matt's in there, Steve Shirley's in there, Jim Miller's in there. Got a good crew representing Florida and Missouri and Michigan and Nebraska. In Nebraska, Lori's on. She texted me and said that she's on just down the hallway and at the McDonald Insane Asylum here in beautiful Ackworth, Georgia. All right, well, I know we'll have some others joining along the way, but it may be a quick session tonight. We'll see how things go, but have had a pretty typical week this week at work and at home. A few interesting things I'll talk about here or one certainly that I didn't anticipate that I'll talk about. But boy, I can't think of a whole lot else to report. Lori has still got her hand dealing with her hand that they operated on her thumb, and that's turning out to be a little bigger deal than maybe she thought, but she's getting by. And what else is happening this week? Our daughter-in-law, Abigail, Zane's wife, had a birthday just a day or two ago. I can't, when is the exact day? She just texted me a couple of minutes ago. Let me look and see here. I guess it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. So happy birthday, Abigail. We have known her since, what grade, Lori? Since Abby and Zane were in middle school, I think. The first time we lived in Atlanta before we moved down to Savannah. We've known Abby that long, and now Abby is, of course, the mother of our two grandchildren by Zane, Colton and Paisley. And then, of course, Abby has remarried to a wonderful guy who's in the Navy, Will. And Will brought a couple of his own to the marriage, and then they've had a couple of their own since being married. And we are sort of we feel like we've got bonus grandkids because, you know, Abby will always feel like our daughter, and her husband Will, I call him my son-in-law, and I think he looks at me like a father-in-law. And in fact, he texted me on Father's Day and wished me a happy Father's Day. But yeah, just wish Abigail the best. And she just texted me and said that her and Will were able to go out to dinner without any kids. Now they have 6 kids. So to get away completely kid-free is an amazing thing. So happy birthday, Abigail. We love you. All right, let's see. Johnny Evol's in here, another one of Zane's battle buddies. Hey, Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Good to have you in here for sure. Always count it a treat to have you with us. What's that, Lori? The 5th? The 5th. The 25th, maybe. 5th? I forgot what I asked. I was asking about, no, I was asking, I'm sorry, I was asking a couple questions that I wasn't sure about. One was Abby's birthday, the other one I've already forgotten. Anyway, but yeah, good to have everybody in there tonight. Let's see, what else? You could still join our Running to Honor 5K team if you want to, the Speaking of Zane team. We're going to be participating with our friend Aaron in that race on July 31st. Anybody that's local, if you want to come out with us and walk, give me or Lori a call, and it'll be at the same place we did last year, Woodstock. Speaking of Woodstock, I actually got out of the house this week on, I don't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday, and went to a real live work meeting, work lunch with one of our partners. So that was a treat to get out of the house. But I did that over in Woodstock. That's where we're going to be doing the run. But good to have you all in there. And Lori and I got out of the house yesterday. She doesn't know this, but I had been thinking about getting out of the house on Saturday and doing something, and I had something particular in mind, and I hadn't committed to it. And then she texted me. We're 20 feet down the hall here, but anyway, she texted me. Daryl's getting a little ahead of me there in the chat. That's okay. That's a little friendly competition I think that you've got with Ken there. But so she texted me and said, "Hey, how about if we go do something tomorrow, Saturday? Get out of the house." Which is great. I love to do that every now and then, especially over the last year, and we've done that a few times. But and she proposed the Currahee Museum up in Currahee, Georgia. If you remember the movie Band of Brothers and all of that, Saving Private Ryan, and the paratroopers trained up there, Toccoa, Georgia, Currahee Mountain. And anyway, they have a nice museum there. I have been there before, actually, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And it's a fun place to visit. And Lori said, "Why don't we run up there?" And I said, "Well, no, you know what? I got a better idea. Let's go up to Chattanooga." And it's only about an hour and maybe hour and 50 minutes for us. And I said, "Let's go to Chattanooga, and I want to go to the Medal of Honor Museum and the Chattanooga National Cemetery." So you may have saw my lengthy post yesterday, but if you recall, many of you may recall about a year ago this time, maybe sometime in May, late May or something, we were getting kind of antsy being stuck in the house, and we decided to get out of the house. And I had learned about this very exciting mission during the Civil War called the Great Locomotive Chase. Well, I did a little research, got the book, did some research, plotted all the stops along the way, the significant locations and everything, and we set out one day to trace the route of the Great Locomotive Chase, which was basically it was an undercover mission by some Union soldiers led by a Union spy, James Andrews, to go behind enemy lines. They were in Chattanooga, to go down to just north of Atlanta to Marietta and hijack a Confederate train. The train was called the General, and the plan was to steal the train in Big Shanty, which is now called Kennesaw. Anyway, so last year Lori and I traced the route, and the plan, this is 1862, was to steal a train, take the train all the way back to Chattanooga, and along the way cut all the telegraph lines and burn some bridges so that the Confederates could not resupply the upcoming battle in Chattanooga. So Anyway, James Andrews and his group of Union soldiers who were undercover in civilian clothing, known as Andrews Raiders. There was about 19 soldiers and a couple civilians, James Andrews, so 20, 21 or 22 total people. Anyway, so the they they made it all the way to Ringgold, Georgia. That's probably 75 or 80 miles from where they started. They almost made it, and it's a fascinating story. You can read the book, or you can watch the 1950s Disney movie starring Fess Parker. Remember Fess Parker, Daniel Boone? Called the Chase, or the Great Locomotive Chase, or the Great Chase. I think it's the Great Locomotive Chase. They call the movie too, but it's known as the Great Locomotive Chase. Anyway, so we took a day. We started early in the morning in Marietta Square, and we finished in Toccoa, some 80 miles away, um, just before the sun went down. And so we made the whole route to where um, Andrews Raiders were captured. They were captured. They all fled on foot. It's a long story. I won't tell you the whole story, but I feel like I am telling you the story. But anyway, they fled on foot, and anyway, they were all captured, and they were taken to Chattanooga, and then eventually taken down to Atlanta, where they were tried. And let's see, 7 of them plus James Andrews were hanged, and 7, I think, managed to escape, and then 6 of them were part of a prisoner exchange. Well, the 6 that were in the exchange ended up being the first 6 recipients of the Medal of Honor. It was a brand new medal, and they were the first 6 recipients. And then, of course, all the other Raiders received the Medal of Honor. And anyway, what does that have to do with Chattanooga? Well, the ones that were executed in Atlanta, the 7 plus James Andrews, are buried in Chattanooga National Cemetery. And there's a nice monument there with a train on top, and just a fascinating story. So the 7 of them plus James Andrews are buried right there where the monument is. And so I feel like we completed the saga by going to the final resting place, and sort of tying a bow on the whole outcome. The other interesting thing about the Chattanooga connection is that since Chattanooga was the first place that a Medal of Honor was issued or awarded to anyone, was in Chattanooga, they happen to be the home of the Medal of Honor Heritage Center, right there in downtown Chattanooga. In fact, it's right there next to the aquarium. In fact, it's kind of annoying that it's right next to the aquarium, because we went there to visit yesterday, and everybody was there for the aquarium, and difficult parking and everything, but well worth it. And we spent a little time in the Medal of Honor Heritage Center there in downtown Chattanooga, and they talk quite a bit about Andrews Raiders and those first recipients of the Medal of Honor. So anyway, that was it's fun, man. I tell you, when you latch onto a story like that, and you dig into it, and you learn about the people and the places, and this is right in our own backyard, like Lori said. Just an amazing thing. So I feel like we finally, after a year, wrapped up that story. So that was a lot of fun, and because of that, as Mr. Cottrell suggested, this is the hat of the week. That's the General was the name of the locomotive. In fact, the General, the locomotive still exists. And Lori and I and our friends Kathy and Gordon visited the Southern Southern Locomotive Museum. I can't remember the name. It's in Kennesaw. It's right there at the station, Big Shanty, where the train was stolen. There's a museum there, and it's part of the Smithsonian Network. And the general is in the museum, so we have seen the general. So there's not too many. There, I don't think there's any more loose ends to the story. We've seen the general. We've seen where the Raiders are buried, and we've been to the Medal of Honor Heritage Center. So we've about wrung that story out, I think. But fascinating story, and many like that in the Civil War and other wars certainly. But anyway, so if you're a military history buff, you would enjoy that. If not, I just wasted the last 20 minutes. But anyway, that was fun. But that was not the most exciting thing to happen to us this week. Um, wow. Now, I'm not going to tell this whole story either. I will tell a bit of it because this is on my YouTube channel and everything. I wrote quite a lengthy account of the occurrences of last Monday and Tuesday, and I think it's probably true that most of you read the account of the funeral of Private William Kenneth Kimmel um, in the on Facebook, and the very interesting situation that Lori and I found ourselves in. Um, and the outcome couldn't have gone any better than that. But let me see if I can tell a quick summary of the story. Well, so Monday night, I'm sitting here in my office watching the Braves game and doing whatever I normally do, sort of to wind down after work. And Lori texts me and says, what'd she say? Hey, her first of all, her friend Jill lost her husband on last Sunday, and he served in the army during the 50s, and somewhere along the way during their relationship that had come up, and Lori recalled it. Well, she was talking to Jill, I guess, on Sunday, and happened to ask about, would he have a military detail or an honor guard or something, and evidently she had not arranged that. The funeral home had not offered it, and Lori said that she hadn't considered it, didn't know where to start with any of that, and Lori said, well, let us know if you need some help with anything, and I guess that was the end of the conversation. And then and Lori will correct me if I get any of this out of order, but Jill got back with her and brought the subject back up and said, yes, it would be nice. So Lori, not realizing what she had just done, texted me and said, hey, Guy, Jill's husband was in the Army and they don't have anything arranged. What do you suggest? And I told her I would look into it. And I asked her, when's the funeral? And she said, this was Monday night. She said, it's Wednesday. I'm like, Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I'm like, you mean like 36 hours from now, Wednesday? And she said, yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness. That's just over a day and it's already night. Anyway, so I started thinking about, what's possible, knowing that, the time is short, the regular channels and the normal avenues that you might follow can't be followed because there's time considerations involved. And so I just started searching, and figured that if something could happen in that short a period of time, perhaps it would be with a local VFW or American Legion that maybe has an honor guard that's comprised of, retired veterans who don't have to be to work during the week and are a little more flexible with their schedule, and maybe they could respond, um, in short notice. And so I fired off a couple of emails and Facebook messages to two American Legion posts that are in the vicinity. This is in Frederick, Maryland, where the funeral is to occur. So I did that, and then the next thing, of course, I'm a big fan of the Patriot Guard Riders, and I know that you can request a mission by the Patriot Guard Riders on their website. So I went to the Patriot Guard Riders website and submitted all the information that they wanted to know, at least the information that I had at the time. I didn't have everything really that I needed. One very important piece of information I did not have, and I was hoping no one asked me for it, and that was proof of Mr. Kimball's service. More about that in a minute. But so anyway, so I had submitted emails and messages to two VFW or two American Legions and to the Patriot Guard Riders. I knew now there was nothing left to do until morning. It was already like 10 o'clock at night. And but I decided I would do one more thing before I wrapped it up for the night. I would just put out a call on Facebook and see if anybody had any ideas or suggestions, and with just a kind of a brief description of what I was trying to accomplish. And I started getting ideas, and some were the same ones I'd already thought of, and that's great. Some other ideas and this and that, and I was amazed at the interest level and the people wanting to help and people sharing the request and the propagation that occurs with social media. And I thought, okay, well, hey, this is good. Get some people thinking. And it didn't take long until a family friend of ours, Matt Hoover, down in Savannah. He's an Air National Guard recruiter, full-time Guard recruiter down in Savannah, and he's a member of a very patriotic family of the Hoovers, whose father was an Army Ranger and then later an Air National Guardsman, and Matt followed in his footsteps. Sam followed in his footsteps, and it's just an amazing family. But Matt saw my request, and he copied one of the guys that works for him, another recruiter, who had been part of the Maryland National Guard Honor Guard. This guy's name's Nick, and so Nick got the message, and Nick messaged me and said, "Hey, listen, I call so and so at this number at 8 o'clock in the morning. They will not have any trouble turning around 24-hour notice request." And I'm like, "Wow, this is great. This is great." Okay, so things were starting to come together, and so Tuesday morning, I was up, got my coffee and all my normal morning stuff, and 8 o'clock came, and I called the number at the Maryland National Guard number he gave me. The guy who schedules the Honor Guard, civilian guy. I've already forgotten his name, but we got to chatting, and I said, "Hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do," and he asked me a few questions, and this and that. He says, "Well, I don't have he said, "I don't have a request for Mr. Kimmel." And I said, "Well, I know. I want to give you a request. I want to make a request." He says, "Okay, well, let me email you the form." So he did, and I filled out the form best I could. I was missing a lot of information, of course, I didn't have from Jill, and I texted Jill and said, "Hey, can you tell me this, that, and the other?" I needed to know his birth date and his service dates and all of this stuff, and Social Security number, everything. And I'm not surprised by it. And then boom, I got the big whammy, and we'll need proof of military service. And I'm like, "You mean like a DD 214?" Or he said, "Well, yeah." Or there were other forms of proof throughout the years. And I said, "Okay, well, let me get with the widow and see what I can find." And so I got back with Jill, and I'm like, "Listen, do you have any proof of his military service. And I think his military service was before they met. So I'm not sure she was along with him during that period of time. But anyway, she says, "Well, I don't know, what would that be?" And she says, I tell you what, I've got a couple of old pictures," and I'm thinking, "Oh, that's not going to do it." But I said, "Okay, well, send me the pictures." I didn't want to let her know that she was trying. I didn't want to let her know that that wasn't going to be good enough, but it wasn't. So we kept talking a little bit, and she said, I said, "Well, I have messages into a couple of the American Legions there near you," and she says, "Oh, well, he was a member of Williamsport and Frederick." I said, "Oh, he was," and she says, "Yeah, he was a member of both of those because we moved, and he moved posts from Frederick to Williamsport." I'm like, "Okay." Well, I got to thinking to myself, in order to join the American Legion, he had to at some point prove his military service. So I hung up with her, and I called the Frederick. It turns out it's the Francis Scott Key Post 11 in Frederick, Maryland, and I talked to the administrative assistant there, Tricia, and I told her who I was, what I was trying to do, and she says, "Oh, I got your email. I'm reading your email here, Mr. McDonald, right?" I said, "Yeah," and I told her what I was trying to do, and she says, "Well, um, I don't know." I said, "Well, can we?" She said, let's just confirm if he was a member." And she said, "Okay." I said, I gave her his full name, and she looked things up, and she says, "Well, do you have his birth date?" And I gave her the birth. She said, "Oh, here it is, William Kenneth Kimmel." I said, "Great." Uh, so he was a member here, and I says, "Well, is there anything that proves his? Do you have anything that proves his military service?" Now, a couple things I'm thinking. I'm asking her something that she may not have, and then even if she does, she may not give it to me. So it's a double whammy I'm up against. I'm thinking, okay, if she does have it, does she consider it sensitive information? Then she won't give it to me. But she gave it to me. She says, "No, I have his. Yeah, I have a copy right here." She says, "It's kind of hard to read, but I'll scan it and I'll email it to you." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And it turns out it was a DD 214. It had all the information on there that I needed. So I turned that around and emailed it to the Maryland National Guard, and the guy received it and said, "Okay." And I said, "Okay, when can you let me know when everything's official and everything?" About 30 minutes later, he emailed me back and says, "Okay, Mr. Kimmel's on the schedule for the Honor Guard." He says, "We're coordinating directly with the funeral home. You can expect him to be there about 45 minutes before the service." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." And that was by about 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, well inside 24 hours until the funeral. And I still was on pins and needles all the way up until Wednesday morning. The service was at 10 a.m. and I was like, "Man, what if it did? What if it doesn't happen? What if it didn't go through?" Anyway, I finally heard from Jill about 11 o'clock, I guess, and she told me that everything went great, and then eventually she sent me some pictures and stuff that her daughter, I think it was her daughter or granddaughter took. But anyway, wow, how about that? Now that's a good story, and it's not a guy story. There were several people along the way that if those people were not in the mix, it wouldn't have happened. Number one was Lori, a friend that cared enough to ask, and then the other was the guy at the honor guard for being so accommodating, and then of course Tricia at the American Legion was instrumental. Any of those things had not happened, and then it would not have happened. So, but anyway, there's your inspirational story for the week, and you can take a lot of lessons from that. Everybody take your own interpretation, but just incredible and humbling to be a part of it, and entrusted with the responsibility of trying to make something happen. And but I tell you what, you never know. You're this far away from doing something for somebody, and just I'm humbled to have been a part of that chain of events that occurred. So anyway, in honor of Private First Class William Kenneth Kimmel, United States Army, Korea, thank you, sir, and rest in peace. All right. Wow. What else do we have here? Well, let's see. We've got this week in military history. Um, I told you I was going to tell you the short version of that story. I think I told you the whole story. Anyway, I won't charge you any extra. But the on June the 25th, 1996, June the 25th, 1996, an occurrence that happened that affected many of us directly with the loss of a fellow crew member, um, somebody that we all served with, flew with, um, Master Sergeant Michael Heiser, killed along with 18 other airmen in the Khobar Towers bombing there in Saudi Arabia. And it's always a sad occasion every June 25th to recognize that. Um, I don't know about Steve and Jim and Amy and the others. All of us served with Mike, but it was, it was several years. Um, Hello, Jonathan Peters. How are you? It was several years after um, Mike was killed that I even found out about it. Now, this was 1996, so we're talking really kind of pre-internet, pre-social media for sure. Um, you had to be, you had to be directly connected with people, and didn't do a lot of email back then. But so it was 2 or 3 years probably before I found out that Michael was one of those killed. Um, and I've since had the opportunity to visit him at Arlington a couple times. And a couple of weeks ago, our friend Ken, at my request, visited him while he was at Arlington laying his mother to rest. So thank you, Ken, for visiting Mike. But great guy, communication systems operator, uh, and was working special air missions out of, I think he was based at Andrews at the time. I can't remember. Somebody can correct me, but he happened to be in Saudi at the time. But rest in peace, Mike. We'll never forget you, brother. And I also learned, this is PTSD Awareness Month. Um, but today, the 27th, is actually PTSD Awareness Day. So how about that? I mean, we have an awareness day for everything, I guess. But I guess if you're going to have one that I would stop and ponder, it would be that far too many people suffering from um, post-traumatic stress disorder caused by something. I'm talking about those in military service, but certainly happens to those in law enforcement and other careers for sure. Okay, well, let's see. We had a little activity on the Veteran Cemetery Challenge this week. I know Daryl paid a visit to Jefferson Barracks. He is our Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery Ambassador. And then Jim, who's on. Hey, Jim. Jim says it was a few years before he knew too. I know that was before we were all reconnected, Jim. And so Jim stopped by and visited our pal Todd Vanderwerken, who passed in 2019 at Omaha National Cemetery. So thank you, Jim, for swinging by. I know I saw on Father's Day his family was out there visiting. And then Lori and I visited Chattanooga National. I had been to Chattanooga National before. It's not our first time. But the first time I visited, I didn't know about the Great Locomotive Chase. So it brought a whole nother element, whole nother dimension. Now, it's not far from downtown Chattanooga. Um, but it's really a big cemetery, and it's an old one. I can't remember when it first opened, but it's an old cemetery. Of course, Civil War dead there, and but they're still placing veterans there. There's still capacity uh, in uh, in the Chattanooga National. So we had a good visit there. I do need to update the map. I think I'm behind on um, a couple of them. One thing I wanted to mention for anybody in California or going to California, and I missed the Bergmeyers passed right by this location I'm going to talk about like a day before I got this request, or they could have swung in there. Randy Bergmeyer, they drove out from they live north of St. Louis, but they drove out to California and back. But anyway, um, my friend Diana, she is she has a friend who lost she has two friends who've lost children in combat, and she has one who's I don't remember if it's a son or daughter. One's a female. I can't remember. Um, but she has the parents live on the East Coast, but he's buried in California, and she was wondering if we had somebody out that way that could visit. And it's actually at Joshua Memorial Park. It's near Palmdale, California. It's near Palmdale, California, if you know where that's at. But anyway, I'm gonna keep my eyes on people's travels, and anybody that's traveling in that neck of the woods, maybe they can swing by to Joshua Memorial Park. But anyway, so with those visits, which I'm counting at four for the week, um, we are at 436 visits that this tiny group of patriots have made to 134 different veteran cemeteries, and will continue to do so for sure. And so moving on to the Thank a Vet Challenge. Only two that I know of this week. There may be some others, and I may have missed some others. Um, Hang on a second, Lori. It's Joshua Memorial Park. Well, I don't know if it's technically Joshua Tree. I have the city, but it's the closest airport is Palmdale. It's in Palmdale, so it is through the desert there. But I don't know if it's technically Joshua Tree. But there's my friend Dan DeVlieger out in speaking of the desert, out in the Tempe, Phoenix, Gilbert. I always forget exactly which little hamlet you're in there, Dan. But good to have you in there. I know you have been busy this weekend with the ARRL Field Day. That's where all of us ham radio operators all across the country get together once a year in sort of other than normal operating conditions to practice uh, providing backup communication in a variety of different ways. And I did not participate with anybody this year, but Dan has been out there. Dan, you'd think you did an overnighter too, but I tell you what, it's an interesting hobby that we have that actually turns into a very productive um, backup mechanism and still used to this day. Um, no doubt about it. But good to have you in there, Dan, always, for sure. So the only two thank yous that I'm aware of this week are two that I made, and they were quite by accident. Um, I thanked an Air Force vet today. I was standing in line to get some garlic bologna sliced, and a guy saw my hat, and I was wearing a sack hat, I think. And he says, "Hey, where were you stationed?" And I told him, Keesler Offutt, Mildenhall Offutt. And he says, "Well, I was Zybrook and Myrtle Beach." And I'm like, "Oh, you were A-10s." He says, "Yeah." And anyway, so I had a good chat with him while we each waited on our deli slices. But so we got a good thank you there with a fellow Air Force vet. And then I thanked a Marine Corps vet at work. I keep meeting more and more vets at work. Of course, we have a very active veterans organization at my work, and stumbled on a Marine who's also an engineer at the company, and had a good chat with him. So that takes us to 865. 865 times somebody from this group has said, "Thank you, I appreciate you, thank you for your service, God bless you," or something like that, or even struck up a conversation with them. And that's a good thing in my book. We'll keep doing that too. All right, organizations. Well, the only thing I can think of on our organizations, I saw some very nice photos of Kelly Kowal, our friend, the Gold Star mother down in Ruskin, Florida, who founded and runs My Warriors Place. I saw that she attended the American Gold Star Mothers National Convention this past week in Memphis. So maybe we have another reason to get her back on as a guest, and she can tell us about that and tell us about the new service dog. Um, I guess I almost said ministry. It's a ministry, but it's an affiliation with the retreat, and I know she's kicking that off. So we might have a good reason to get Kelly back in here and tell us what she's up to. And let's see what else we got. That's about it for the organizations. If you guys know of any organizations that you're involved in, hear about, you see that are doing good work, and you want to share with everybody, let me know. We can certainly broadcast that, because there are a lot. You don't have to look very far to find some people doing good work. That's for sure. That is for sure. All right. Well, we had another incident in the barracks. Army Private Mariah Pouncey was found dead in the barracks at Fort Bliss. Now, you may recall Fort Bliss is getting a little bit of a reputation for dead soldiers. And under a variety of circumstances, they can't quite, they can't tie them all together. There's no common thread necessarily, but still somewhat of an epidemic there. But this last week, an Army private was found dead there in the barracks at Fort Bliss. And I don't know if foul play was suspected or anything like that, but sad nonetheless. Okay, well, let's see. Don't forget, as you go out into the week at work or at school or at church or wherever, you know what, Jonathan? Now that you mention it, Fort Hood, it's Fort Hood. I'm giving Fort Bliss the credit for Fort Hood's problems. They're both in Texas, but you're right about that. It was Fort Hood. This happened to be Fort Bliss. Yep, yep. And anyway, so if you're out and about this week, make it a good week. I tell you what, you're not in control of everything that happens around you, but you're in control of how you respond to it, and that's the good thing. That you can control. If you're out and about, think of vet. If you see an old crotchety veteran walking down the ice cream aisle at Kroger, stop and say hi and thank you, and or Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever we bump into to our vets. But it might be the only time they hear that in years, and you could be the one to tell them thank you. And think about it; they may not have heard that from anybody in a long time. But anyway, um, check on your friends. I tell you, I cannot say enough or cannot overstate the value of staying in touch with your battle buddies, your wingman, your shipmate. Let them know you care about them. Check on them. See how they're doing. People don't tell us everything that's going on in their lives, and we can't just assume everything is perfect, because we know human beings aren't perfect, and people are going through trouble. And sometimes all it takes is for them to know somebody cares about them. And but anyway, it's an easy thing to do. So be sure to check on your friends, and remember what Ronald Reagan said. I think I told you I got the opportunity to tell my whole company this a couple weeks ago. Um, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And we don't know them all, but we owe them all. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. And somebody said, I don't know who this quote goes to, but be an American worth dying for. That's all service members should have to worry about. That's all they should have to ask in return. Be an American worth my sacrifice. But anyway, Have a great week, everybody. I'm looking forward to next week already. Lori's reminding us in the chat there that her favorite time of year is coming up, the 4th of July. She's a patriotic American, and she loves to celebrate the birth of this great country, and I do too. And she does a great job of making the place look very patriotic and festive, and we'll look forward to having a great day off on the 4th. You know, a lot of times I'll wait a lot of times I won't do, that reminds me, I'll have to think about speaking to Zane for the week, for the Sunday before the 4th. We'll see. We'll see. Stay tuned. You guys do. Stay tuned. Watch Speaking of Zane, and we'll make sure everybody knows what we're doing. But thanks, everybody, for joining. I can't tell you how much it means to us, and from the bottom of our hearts that you guys show up here every Sunday. And for those of you that didn't make it today and are watching the video on YouTube or Facebook, thank you for joining us. We don't feel like we're alone in the effort to keep Zane's name alive, because you guys are right there with us, and we appreciate it. So have a great week. We'll see you next week for the 151st edition of Speaking of Zane.